Okay. Fischer Fowl, the Northland wood fiberglass canoe. And the reason I titled this Fish or Fowl is because it made me ask the question, is it really a wooden boat or is it a fiberglass boat? This one came to me as a repair project, and I've been learning so much about the history of canoes by studying it. Here's a little bit about me. I'm actually more of a rower than a paddler. I'm learning tons of stuff by watching and listening to you true canoeists talk about how canoes are paddled and handled. I got into this by wanting to row, and not being able to afford a real rowboat, I embarked on a project to restore a 1924 Old Town double ender, which is the boat that you see on the left there with me rowing it. I live in Pittsburgh and do most of my paddling and rowing on Chautauqua Lake in Western New York. Since the double ender, which was done about 4 years ago, I've done a couple of other projects. One is a 1967 Old Town Atka, the white boat there, which some neighbors wanted restored for a wedding. They did actually paddle it, though really what they wanted to do was fill it full of ice cubes and beer and champagne for the wedding reception. I pass no judgment on that. And the most recent project I did is the lower right there. That's a 1911 Racine boat made in Wisconsin. It was a very interesting project as well. But the Northland is what we're talking about tonight. As a wooden canoe with a fiberglass covering, I see it as a missing link in the evolution of canoes, of course. We start out with bark and log boats back, at the beginning of time. Then in the 1800s, wood canoes made with wood planks started to emerge, and then wooden canvas designs in the early 1900s. And then this canoe design, wood with fiberglass covering, it started appearing in the mid-1940s during the war. And, kind of as a side note, I guess you could describe, you could put cedar strip canoes with modern fiberglass and epoxy covering in that category as well, but we're going to just skip over that. And then, of course, followed by aluminum canoes towards the end of the war, and true fiberglass, all fiberglass canoes in the 60s, and then composites in the 70s. But this wood with fiberglass struck me as a very interesting transition point, because I have a short history with the WCHA. I've only been involved 3 or 4 years, and I really thought wood and canvas was all there was. And then all of a sudden, this boat comes into my life. So I did a little studying on Northland canoes, and I'm thrilled and a little bit, intimidated by the fact that Alex and Pam are here, because they're, they know the real stuff. All I had up until this point is what I could find on the internet. The company started in Huntsville in the mid-1940s, probably not coincidentally, right around the time that fiberglass technology, a quick curing fiberglass technology, became available in this part of the world. There was, if you research it, there's a, Nazi wartime secret story about quick curing polyester that made this technology possible to commercialize, as the war came to a close. Apparently, Northland is one of the companies that adopted this process, and they used it to produce up to 200 canoes a year. They made 8 different models. And in 1964, the company was purchased by an employee who had been building the boat since 1956, a man named Albert Maw. The only other interesting data points here was like so many other canoe companies, I guess, the shop and molds and assets and plans and drawings and everything were all destroyed in a fire in 1995. But Albert apparently continued to build canoes based in Novar, Ontario. And there you see a deck plate from the boat that I'm working on, salvaged from the boat with the Northland decal on the deck. And I became intrigued with Albert as I got further into this project. I couldn't really find a lot of direct information about him on the internet. He's definitely off the grid, in a modern sense, but he apparently is still around. And some of the best information I found was on the WCHA forums, and Alex himself has been in touch with Albert, and I don't know, Alex, if you want to chime in. Apparently, at 86, he's still working on canoes and also making maple syrup and doing logging.
Yeah, he's got an old hunt camp. That's what his 1,100 acres of bush are. And he, in the process of building a road through there. This is what he was telling me in September. He lives by himself in the house that he was born in. If you looked at his shop, it looks like it's ready to fall down anytime. It's pretty old, but he's an interesting guy, and he's more than willing to talk to anyone that comes by. So
I think he's an international treasure myself. Just doing all these amazing things and still keeping the heritage of this boat going. The other comment that I saw in the forums was kind of fun. There was a conversation going on about his boats. People were asking questions and answering them. And somebody chimed in, somebody named Wayne E. Maw, apparently a family member, saying, "I see your business is still going. LOL, Uncle Albert." Good. So there's third-party confirmation that this man actually exists.
Well, and there's a longer history to the Maw family building canoes, because I once owned a Robert Maw wideboard canoe made of cedar instead of basswood.
Oh, and really?
It had a brass thwart and plate saying Robert Maw.
Interesting.
Rob, I had asked Albert about that, and he said he might be a distant relative, but he didn't know of him.
Oh, I've always wondered if it was his father or grandfather, but he didn't know him. Huh.
Yeah.
So
how many Maws can there be?
I have to ask a dumb question now. Are you implying that the canoe that I'm working on is made of basswood as opposed to cedar? Or?
Oh, a wideboard canoe is an earlier construction type. That were most often made from basswood, but some of them were made from cedar.
Okay.
Basswood is a lot less rot resistant than cedar, so not that many of them survive unless they've been well protected.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this one looks like cedar to me, and other folks have confirmed that it's cedar, so I'm kind of, but I'm in a learning mode here. As I said to Alex, I said, talking about a Canadian boat to Canadian folks is a little, it's a challenge. I'm really just a guy with a PowerPoint here. So I hope you guys need to keep me on track. One comment I did find out about this, it has a reputation for being an exceptionally tough canoe. And Alex, you can help me out here. Alex described this these as kind of working boats. He made a lot for camps and so on up in Canada.
Yeah, for camps and hunters and that sort of thing. I mean, when you look at the finish of them, it's nothing like Pam would do, right? But I've had mine, like I said, since 1974. It's taken a fair bit of abuse. We've had it through white water. it takes a real beating. Now, having said that, when I had mentioned to you, as it's gotten older, you know, the wood's becoming very, very brittle with that fiberglass coat on.
Is it that the wood is kind of sealed by the fiberglass that makes it get brittle like that?
I think so. I think so. You know, if I haven't stripped one of, well, I took some of polyester off of this canoe, but you can still see fiberglass on there. There was a fair bit of work to get it cleaned up.
Yeah, this boat has some very brittle planks on it that I'm replacing, but the typical construction is fiberglass on cedar planks and ribs. I read somewhere that a black cherry gunnels and seats, as you can see in the photo, is pretty common. And the seats are made of woven rawhide. Somebody on the internet suggested it might be moose hide. That might be a tall tale, I don't know. And then another way you can tell it's a Maw boat is with the stem number, which is a combination of the serial number of the boat and the year it was made. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. I'm kind of making the claim that Albert Maw, or well, Northland, is one of the pioneers in this type of fiberglass construction, maybe any kind of fiberglass boat construction. And the literature that I saw on the internet claimed that these boats tend to be 8 to 10 pounds lighter than canvas, you know, apples to apples. They are rot proof, which of course applies to the fiberglass, maybe not the wood, but definitely the fiberglass doesn't rot. And, you know, in the early days, they were made with polyester resin as opposed to epoxy, which is the way we make fiberglass boats now. Repairs are comparatively simple and permanent, which I take to mean that, you know, if you punch a hole or you scratch a fiberglass, you can just very easily slap another piece of fiberglass on there with some resin, sand it a little bit and paint it, and you're good to go. In my boat, and I think maybe a lot of these boats, the interior was finished with polyurethane finish instead of the, you know, traditional Epiphonus spar varnish type stuff. Very hard to get off. Then this boat's named Suzy Q, and it came to me when this couple in the photo here walked into a local outfitter in Mayville, New York on Chautauqua Lake and said, "Do you know anybody that fixes up old canoes?" Well, it turns out I was the only guy in the region that the outfitter knew that claimed to fix up old canoes, and that's what got me into this. Mike gave the couple my name, and we got in touch. And I found myself on their front lawn taking a look at this boat. And here's the reason they wanted it fixed up. Stan and Suzy Blass of Buffalo, New York, got married in 1972, and one of the first things they did was buy themselves a Northland. It was serial number 58, built in 1972, same year they got married. They had many, many, many adventures in the Algonquin area. And it being 1972, they were also rock and rollers, and they liked Creedence Clearwater. And Stan basically just said, well, I'm just going to name this boat Suzy Q after my wife and my favorite song. So that's how she got the name. They are still married, happily, have a big family, and took care of everything over a period of 50 years, except for Suzy Q. I think what maybe put this boat out of commission was a hole punched in the bilge by some object, maybe a rock or a stump or a snag or something. And when that happened, apparently they decided not to fix it. Turned it upside down and left it in the backyard for 20 years. I don't know. But this being the year of their golden wedding anniversary, they decided to commemorate it by having this boat restored. Well, I agreed to take on the project, and I think maybe I was wearing beer goggles when I took a look at it and said, yeah, this is a doable job. It didn't look so bad with the fiberglass on. I thought maybe we don't really need to take the glass off. You know, we can just touch up the gunnels a little bit and patch that hole in the bottom and paint it, and it'll be good to go. I brought it down to Pittsburgh from Chautauqua in September and took it to the annual meeting of our Three Rivers chapter of WCHA, and had some real canoe experts take a look at it. I don't know if you know these folks. Millie Sass is the one with the life vest on, flexing her muscles. I think it's Fred Capanos in the middle, and Tony, I can't remember his last name. Help me out, Andy. Oh, Andy's left. Oh, well,
Tony,
anyway.
No, I was doing, it's Tony Stanton.
Tony Stanton.
That is Fred.
What's that?
That's Fred in the middle and Tony on the stand.
Yeah, and on the right, that is...
That's Millie. Oh, yeah, that's Millie.
Millie's on the left.
Oh, wait a minute. No, that's Lee.
Lee.
Lee Grubish. That's Fred's significant other.
So as you can see, this is presenting quite a puzzle to them. And the question I was asking that day was, should I take the fiberglass off? Because I had never done this before, and I didn't know how difficult it would be or what damage I would do if I took the fiberglass off, and whether it would be, you know, a good idea or a bad idea. And I think it might have been Lee who just walked up to the bow of the boat, which you can see there if you look closely at the photo, and grabbed a piece of fiberglass and started ripping it off. She said, well, look, it's going to come off really easy. So that committed me to removing the fiberglass. And there was there's a parable or not. But at the time, I really didn't know what the other challenges were going to be. You know, the obvious damage was the outwales were pretty much gone. There's some stem rot there you can see right at the very tip. The lower right-hand photo is the hole that was punched through the bilge. And then the upper right photo is the carry yoke that was kind of chewed up by their Labrador Retriever puppy. So this boat really had seen a lot of intense action and definitely needed some repair. But I didn't know how much it needed until I really got the fiberglass off and got a close look at it. So with the outwales gone, I realized that there was just a lot of rot in the inwales, and these are black cherry, I'm pretty sure. The decks were kind of fused to the inwales, and the screws were not, I couldn't remove them. About 90% of the rib tops were rotten. There was a cracked rib and a punctured plank, and a lot of the planks, especially up towards the gunnels, were brittle and fragile, as we talked about. The seats needed new rawhide. The seats were actually in pretty good condition, but they need new rawhide. The keel was rotten and gone, and of course the yoke was chewed by a dog. But as per the brochure, the fiberglass was in really good shape. There was no rot in the fiberglass. So we answered the question of whether or not to remove the glass by realizing that, yeah, we were just going to have to take the glass off in order to repair the boat. It wasn't going to be a simple case of paint it and slap some gunnels on it and go. And not having done a fiberglass job before, I actually asked some friends to do the deglassing. These are the guys from Evergreen Outfitters in Mayville, New York. They don't you know, they know about fiberglass, but they don't know about wooden canoes. So we collaborated, and they took the glass off for me, and that was a great thing. Trying to figure out whether to, well, this is the discussion about whether to remove the glass. And I went to the WCHA forums, which is a wonderful source of knowledge. A guy named Jim Dodd said it's a big project, but it's doable. And he talked about the polyester resin instead of epoxy, which, as he predicted, made the glass come off easily. And then he just recommended to go for it. Patch the wood, sand and glass it, leave the keel off and the stem band, and go and take it away. That was one opinion. Alex, this is my first meeting with Alex. Definitely worth fixing. It's a great canoe. I'm in the process of putting new gunnels on mine. I had thought of canvassing it, but decided to stay true to the Albert Maw original design. So Alex, how did your gunnels come out?
I'm still working on it. Just trying to fair the hull a bit. There are a couple spots that needed some touch up because I had these little cracks. I had taken my keel off a few years ago, and as I was saying, it was starting to take on water. But what I found was when you step in it and you're in it, you see the hull flex, and I think the keel strengthens it up. So I just want to fix those little cracks, put the keel back on, new gunnels, coat of paint, and then I'll give it to my daughter.
I think I may put a keel back on this boat too, based on what you're talking about. You know, folks have said, you know, people don't do keels anymore. But this boat is flexy. It's thin. You know, it's not beefy, and I think it might need that rigidity that a keel.
Skimped a little bit on the resin. You could see in some areas where, you know, you can still see the weave coming through the fiberglass.
Yeah.
And the other thing he did to keep the weight down that I forgot to mention to you earlier was he put a powder in, like he colored the resin, so he didn't paint them.
Oh, really?
I remember asking him about that. He said, yeah, he had a powder mixed in with the resin and put that on. He didn't have to paint the boat.
Oh, interesting.
You know, so that would save a few pounds in paint, I guess. But
so you haven't put glass back on yours yet, have you?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I did that probably, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. Actually, before I joined the WCHA and had any inkling of what I was doing. And this time it's not coming off, right? I used epoxy last time. So these small spots where I'm trying to fix things up, and you can sand it down to the wood, but the glass itself isn't coming off.
Mm-hmm.
My recollection is that the ribs are only 1/4 inch as opposed to 5/16 or 3/8. Is that not right, Alex?
I think so. I think you're right, Pam. Yeah. He was
think
trying to
he
make
was-
a fairly light boat, right? He was trying to keep it light.
Well, I think he was also knowing that the fiberglass itself would add some strength to the outside, the cloth and the resin. So I think he went with quite thin ribs, and I think the planking was pretty thin too.
Yeah, I would concur with that. This boat seemed really pretty stable while the fiberglass was on it, but once I got it off, it felt like a basket of popsicle sticks, you know. So I'm a little concerned about, you know, well, so here's an opinion from a guy who says I should really put canvas back on. Glad you took the glass off. It's the only way to fix anything. Putting canvas on the hull is the only solution to being able to fix anything broken or rotten going forward. Does anybody know this guy, Dave Osborne? You know, yeah. Okay. I mean, I think it's sound advice. I myself am just still weighing it against the idea that, you know, the creator of this boat made it in fiberglass for a reason. And then there's that stability thing, which I think is also a characteristic of fiberglass that you lose a little of with canvas.
So you have not recovered the boat yet, Brad?
No, no, right now, you'll see some photos of the work in progress. It's, I'm planking it right now. And, so, you know, still a little
So
ways.
I don't mean to interrupt or cause further confusion, but there is another option, which is both canvas and epoxy. You can put canvas on the canoe and then fill it with epoxy with fairing filler in it. And Dick Pearson has experimented with that. And I've done a couple of canoes like that.
Now, why would that be? Why would you do that instead of just fiberglass and epoxy?
Because then you can take it apart and repair it if you need to, repair the wood if you need to, but you have the extra abrasion resistance of fiberglass. You're not really going to save any weight unless you put a very thin coat or several coats with lots of fairing filler in it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, so
that would. Sorry, I think Rob, I don't think that would add to the structural strength of it, though. Like the
it wouldn't.
Like the actual fiberglass. That's just an alternate filler.
Yeah,
using the epoxy as a filler versus yeah, it does make it tough and abrasion proof, but it wouldn't add to the actual structural strength like the original fiberglass would have.
Right. And so I've done one that I put the keel back on and one that I didn't put the keel back on. And again, it depends on how strong structurally the canoe is.
Well, the final word came from Andy. Now that you did all the hard work of removing the glass, the question is, why the hell put glass on it again? So, there's a whole spectrum of opinion here, and I value all of it. And what I haven't done yet is go back to Stan and Suzy and ask them how authentic they want their boat to be. And that's going to be kind of the final question. Explain the trade-offs and then let them make the decision. Here's what she looks like when we got the glass off. There's lots of resin still sticking to the planks. I got about half of it off with a heat gun and a scraper. And you can see that the old planks, you can see that brittleness, especially the planks up by the gunnels are, very weathered and brittle. So we spent a lot of time scraping that off. And then then things started to unravel, right? The more I looked at it, the more I realized that the ribs were going to need to be redone, and I was going to need to build new INWALES as well as OUTWALES. So that's what we're looking at here, is various stages of rib top repair. And I'd never done a project that had so many ribs that needed doing before. So a lot of these rib tips were put on twice, maybe 3 times before I was able to get them strong and straight. And it's interesting, you can see the ribs. He put them on real rough. I assume this is white cedar, but it's it's got a very rough. A lot of the ribs had very rough outsides, and they're beautiful on the inside, but they're pretty rough. And Pam explained to me in the last time I presented this. Pam was there. I pointed to the cant rib in the lower right-hand corner, that extra wide cant rib up by the stem. Was not something that I had seen before, but if I remember right, Pam, that's pretty typical of Canadian canoes designs.
Yep, that's a Canadian thing.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that in the old towns and the Racine that I had worked on, so that was kind of interesting. Had to make new INWALES. I didn't have any 20-foot sections of black cherry, so I had to use white oak and bend it, steam it and bend it in some forms. And you can see in the lower right the the new frame is sitting next to the old one, and that took a little bit of doing. And then, you know, I haven't done the outwales yet, but that will be the next step once we get her covered. And then another fun learning part of this project was the stems. You can see in the left side of the slide here that I didn't have a lot to go on. The stem was rotted away coming up from the you know, the front of the boat, and then of course the deck had rotted back. So I didn't really have any idea how to join these two. And again, I'm going to quote Pam here because I think she said, well, they basically did it with a nail. It was just pretty basic. The deck came straight out and the stem came up to meet it, and you'd put a nail in there and it'd hold. And of course, the ribs and planks would wrap around it to give it all the strength it needed. But I had to do it the hard way, so I had to splice the stem, and I decided to carve out a section there that I could join to the deck with the mortise and tenon kind of arrangement that I think it was in Jerry Stelmach's book. It's not going to be as light as the original boat, but it should hold on for a while. And it came time for the planks. This was a bit of serendipity. Right around the time I was looking for planks for this boat, Fred Kapanos noticed that his neighbor was demolishing the siding on his house. And it's a beautiful red cedar, which when you finally get the paint off of it and run it through a planer, looks pretty good. It doesn't come in 17-foot lengths like the original planking on the boat, but it is great wood, and that's what we're going to use. And I'm going to tell Stan and Suzy that it was donated by the WCHA, and I which it pretty much was. So I hope they'll appreciate that. That lower right-hand photo is an inspiration from this project. Having found this reclaimed red cedar, I went on. We just bought a condo in Pittsburgh that we're moving into, and it had an old school hot tub in the deck. And we weren't going to keep the hot tub, so we had it taken apart. And I thought maybe it was made out of cedar, and that's what you see there is the it was like a barrel wrapped with iron hoops. Turns out that's redwood, not cedar. So I don't think that's canoe material. Anybody want to raise a hand and venture an opinion on that? Redwood, anybody ever built a boat out of redwood?
Brad? Yeah, I did a little research, and the physical characteristics are quite similar to red cedar. It is more brittle than red cedar, and I am actually currently building a canoe using red cedar planking. It's a lot harder to work with, but it is, with care, it is doable.
Redwood?
Redwood, yeah, redwood.
Oh, well, you want some?
I've got plenty. I have a source. I have a source for quarter sawn redwood that I could live long enough to use it all up.
Oh, okay. That's right. You told me that before. I have to come and see that boat in progress. I will say that once I've got one of these, I guess it's a barrel stave or whatever you call it, through the saw, the wood is beautiful inside. It's just really gorgeous. It's just like the red cedar. It's got that beautiful grain, except it's darker, kind of wine colored, and it's gorgeous wood. So I'll find something to do with it, if not make a boat. So I'm wrapping it up now. This photo is, I took this evening You can see I've got some of the planks back on. I'm almost done with planking, and the ribs are all set, and the INWALES and decks are in place. And I'm still kind of pondering the glass versus canvas, right? The advantage of glass being, and it's the way Northland built the boat. It's authentic, and it's got that combination of structural strength, although I think there's some debate about that, but it is fairly strong. And it certainly, that's the way the boat, the boat was designed to be strong that way. On the other hand, canvas, it's a natural, much more natural kind of material. It's easier to work with than fiberglass, I think. And it has that advantage that we all know, that you can take it off and fix the boat and put another canvas right back on. You can't really do that with epoxy. And it's, so it kind of depends on whether you ever think the boat's ever going to need to be fixed again. That in my mind, that's kind of the bottom line for the folks who own this boat. How do they plan to use it, and how close do they want it to be to the original boat they bought from Northland 50 years ago? So I'm going to ask them that question and share all your advice with them and see what they say. And finally, I added this bullet just tonight after talking to Alex before the meeting. License to keel. Should I put a keel on this boat? I'm kind of thinking that I wasn't going to, but after talking to Alex and kind of thinking through the structural concerns of this very light boat, I think a keel might be a really good idea. So I'm probably going to do that. And I have a piece of keel about 6 inches long from the wreck when I got it originally that I'm going to use as a template to build a keel with.
Can you still get polyester resin, or do you have to use epoxy?
Somebody told me that you can do this, that if I wanted to go full, full old school, I could build it. I could put polyester fiberglass back on it. And as per my experience here, that it does come off easily, so that's an option too. And then I think if Stan and Suzy wanted fiberglass, I'd try, that's the way I'd try to go.
Yep, that sounds good.
Any other questions? I just want to thank Stan and Suzy and my gurus from Three Rivers, Fred, Craig Johnson, Andy, and Millie, and the guys at Evergreen Outfitters. And of course, Alex and the Northern Lakes chapter for inviting me to share this with you.